15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start.
You good, Chief? Should we count in? Oh, fuck. Fuck these people. That's rude. I feel like people that call me is rude. How rude. Even when I know I'm expecting it. Notification.
This guy sent us that in the mail.
Does it say, where is this picture taken?
And fucking...
Flip it over.
Aruhu, I know that word means the top. Like,
it's in Wakanda.
is that Wakanda?
That's West Africa.
Yeah, Uruhu in Swahili means like, I think it means...
Uhuru. It's freedom.
That's what Uhuru means?
It's Swahili. Yo, my sister used to speak fluent Swahili.
Really?
Yeah. We both went to private schools. She went to a Swahili school, and I went to Catholic school.
Where is there a Swahili school?
Brooklyn.
Really?
Brooklyn it's a cultural mecca. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a Swahili school, though.
Yeah.
The only thing
I don't know if it's called a Swahili school, but she learned Swahili.
The only thing I know in Swahili is poli poli.
Poli poli, Jumbo, and Ndugu. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Because
in jail, blacks would speak Swahili to speak in code.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. How's your Swahili?
Just the basics, but it's a little... People be hitting me on... I be saying shit in videos in Arabic and Swahili, like little things, and people love that. The people I know, they love it.
Right.
They love it.
It means so much to someone if that's their like primary language, and to hear someone just acknowledge it is such a validating thing.
It takes so little effort to make people happy.
Yeah.
Like with showing that you care or that you have some appreciation for their culture.
Right. And especially when you could say it the right way and at the right time. And you know how I always say khalas? It's always when it's... I don't even try to say it. I'm just so used to saying it.
What does that mean?
It's like, that's it. That's done. It's a wrap. You know what I mean? So I'll be explaining a workout and I'm like, khalas, that's it. Khalas.
I did like a show in France like 10 years ago. My dad came. He'd never been to Europe before, never left the country before. Mm-hmm. And he had like, you know, the typical kind of American, like the French are assholes. Like they're not nice to me. And I said, like, you don't have to speak French. But if you make an effort, they appreciate it. Well, it's respectful. If you just start yapping at people in English, you're making like these assumptions that everyone speaks English, and maybe they do, especially in a city like that. But if you can just acknowledge that you're trying to speak their language, it's just such a sign of respect and validation. Yeah,
and then I noticed that people will often, when people don't speak another language, they'll just speak English louder. Like that helps.
Right, that helps anyone. That's the problem.
That's not it, bro. I can't. You even more aggravating now.
Right, right.
Know? So what's up, man? Casey Neistat. We just fucking started. That's how we do.
Let's
That's
go.
How we roll.
Let's go.
Yeah, I got my boy up in here. Shout out to Casey Neistat. This is the man.
Take it.
Casey and I met in the last year, I believe.
Yeah.
Just ran into each other at the gym. But I have been following you for a long time on YouTube. I loved your style of editing, but I also, through YouTube, I saw that you was a good human being. Like, I like this guy. So I was a fan. I was a normal fan.
I appreciate that. I edit myself to make myself seem like a really good guy.
It's pretty
you're fucking good at it.
You're good at it.
It's convincing.
It's working.
Real convincing.
Nah, like, I was a fan. I was intrigued, man. I think one video, I'm like, yo, I was thoroughly enjoyed, but I thoroughly enjoyed one of your videos, and I was like, wait a minute, did he just take a trip to the rental car place? Like, that's it? I love this shit. You know what I'm saying?
It's never the story. It's just how you tell it.
Exactly.
It's just how you tell it.
Exactly.
And since we're telling Casey stories, I'll tell you how I came across Casey the first time. It was like 3 years ago. We were going to this event that I heard of called HustleCon that you were speaking at.
That's right. That's right.
And so, you know, I was stuck in the time, you know, it's been 10 years, 15 years. I've been in the fitness health space. So when it came to YouTube, I was really stuck in that little bit of cars, and that was it. So we heard, you know, we saw the rundown of who was speaking, and I was like, well, I want to know who these people are, you know, so I can learn from them. And you were on the list, and I went on and I saw the style of videos you were making with the vlogs, and particularly the video you did on the Emirates plane.
Yeah.
And it was like, this guy is on to something. Like, the rapid cuts, the quick entertainment, like the whole style of it. It was very intriguing.
But see, his is not. I see the rapid cuts being abused.
Yeah, no, it's a tasteful way.
It's a tasteful way that you do your style of editing or movie making.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's like you can always emulate, copy, take inspiration from the technical aspects, but it's the actual like soul of the content.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like think of your favorite musician. Think of like, you know, think of your favorite, I like hip hop, your favorite hip hop artist or whoever. Like they got a unique sound. But then that unique sound starts to get played because everybody copies that unique sound. But if they can't match the lyrics and the soul and like what's behind that sound, there's just nothing there. And it's the same with YouTube. It's the same. Like when I was doing daily videos, like there were like everybody started doing daily videos, and a lot of people really they emulated a lot of my formula, which I found to be super flattering. But there's no the depth behind it was something that people I think found much more challenging. Like how do you engage people? How do you be honest? And how like, you know, Mike, you live a 24-hour day. Distill that down to 8 minutes and still make it feel true. Make me as a stranger, I don't know you, make me feel like I know you and I'm spending the whole day with you and you got 10 minutes of your 24 hours to do it. That's a really hard thing to do. Exactly. So you can figure out the jump cuts in an hour if you know how to use Premiere or whatever you're editing on. But to find that sort of soul, I know for me it was like a really, really long, you know, it was 10 years, 15 years of making movies before I was able to sort of speak my honest truth through video. So
I noticed you always call your movies movie, right? Why is that?
Well, I don't know what else to call them. I don't shoot on video anymore. I mean, I guess it is video. It's not videotape.
It's not tape.
Yeah.
I still call it tape. I'd be like, yo, the tape ready?
I want you to know, like, a lot of people ask me that question. So I Googled the word movie.
Right.
To understand, like, what is the actual dictionary definition. And it doesn't say anything about length. Right. So I always like to think of my little videos as movies, whether they're 3 minutes long or they're 10 minutes long or they're 2 hours long, because like when I did my daily vlog, every day I was always looking for 3 acts, a beginning, a middle, and an end.
So I think that's a movie.
Set up, and then you got like conflict and then resolution. And like that's the structure of a movie.
Correct.
So like what does length or the fact that it's on YouTube have to do with it? I think a video is like when I'm watching like Michael Jordan highlight clips, you know, I'm watching Tyson 88 clips. That's a video. Right. But for me it was always more than that. So I don't know. It felt honest to call it a movie.
Without you ever telling me that, I knew that. I figured that was what it was, and it also made me respect what you do more because you had more respect for your craft enough to call it a movie versus just a video. You know, and I dig it. I fucks with that.
I appreciate it. There's something aspirational about it too. Like I've made and I've worked on big feature length films and stuff. I know what that is, and I know a YouTube video that I make in a day is not that. Right. So there's something aspirational about it. Like for me to call it a movie makes me feel like I'm reaching for something, and I like that. I find it to be motivational.
Indeed. So for those who don't know who Casey is, get from out under the rock that you're on in Bikini Bottom. Come on. But Casey he's a really dope creator on YouTube, movie maker. Casey is a professional filmmaker. That's how I see you. You know, sure. I was like, yo, he's smashing us on YouTube. Because you have a more of a professional polish, even when it's just vlog style. It's still got that quality, you know what I mean? And it's real subtle, you know, because you still feel like this is just YouTube. This is YouTube. It's all YouTube. But I don't think people will really understand why your shit stands out so much. And it's real special, bro. It's dope. A part of it, all right, let's take the technical stuff away. Sure. Is you. You know what I mean? Everybody has their little magic that draws other people to them. And you just a very pleasant human being and just a good, I mean, just by watching your channel, bro, it's like I know a part of you before meeting you. And you're a good dude. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I appreciate that.
People can see through bullshit.
People can see through bullshit.
You know?
I agree. I think it's like the certain editing style, that's a tactic. Right. Versus like who you are and the energy you exude. That's what really matters. That's why people couldn't just apply your formula and be successful.
I used to talk a lot about like the bullshit meter. Like people today, especially young people, younger than us, people who grew up on YouTube, their bullshit meters are so fine-tuned because they watch so much content, especially
Right.
on a place like YouTube, where everybody, or most people anyways, they're trying to sort of promote an ethos of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And if it smells at all, if there's the slightest tinge of bullshit in there, like I think about my kid, my son, like he can pick up on bullshit like that, and he just changes it. He's not going to watch it.
Yeah.
And it's like where you could once get away with a lot of bullshit. I think now there's just so much out there that if it feels off, it feels wrong, it feels disingenuous, you just
Right.
move on.
And
you're
then
never gonna
anything,
build that
and everything
audience.
can be checked
Everything can be checked.
that fast.
Yeah, everything can be checked.
I'm not mad at it, but I got a question. It's like the good and the bad, right? So you're right. YouTube is an infinite amount of information and content that we can look at and we can consume. Excuse me, not just YouTube, but Instagram, TikTok,
Yeah,
Facebook, you
social,
name
all
it,
of it.
across the board. That's just where we're at today. Is that kind of desensitizing people to really appreciating content, to really sitting and letting something soak in? Because I like the on-demand aspect of everything. I don't want to have to watch my show at 8 o'clock on a Sunday. I want to watch it when I want to watch it. But is that kind of taken a little bit from us, from the novelty of things?
I think about it a lot, and I think what it's done is it has made like movie making or video making, it's made it a lot less special. And I think that that's a positive thing.
Okay.
You know, I say, like, if you want to be a writer, you need a pencil and a notepad. But if you want to be a filmmaker, especially when we were kids, Mike, you needed an infinite amount of money. You needed resources. You needed education. You needed all this shit that was prohibitive. It was like an art form that was so exclusive. And there were all these gatekeepers.
Right.
So now you don't need anything. You got your cell phone. You got everything you need. You can shoot, edit, and distribute globally right on your phone.
Right.
So I think that that's beautiful. I think that like democratizes it. And as far as it being like so noisy, yeah, it's noisy as fuck. Like it's really hard to find stuff that's good. But, and I say this very gently, although I mean it, I don't think there's more good stuff being made now than there was in the past. There's just a lot more noise.
Right.
You know, like I think Netflix, like forget about YouTube, Netflix is a good example. Like Netflix they're putting out like whatever, 100 new things a month, 100 new episodes or pieces of media a month. But I know I only like 5 things a month that I see on there.
Right.
And I love them. They're great.
Yeah.
But there's a quantity and there's a quality, and I think that that's true across any platform. And I think just because this art form is finally democratized, it doesn't mean everybody's going to be good. It just means everybody now can walk through the door, and that's fair.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree with you. I just sometimes I do, you know, I like to have my movie nights, but I'm like, I've seen everything, you know? I feel like I have too easy access to too
content,
much.
yeah.
And I think personally, I would appreciate if I had to wait a little longer. It would just make me want these things a lot more, you know? I think the specialness is kind of gone.
I was listening to Vox has a great podcast right now. It's like an origin stories about Blockbuster. It's one of the episodes.
Blockbuster movie store?
Video.
Yeah.
Okay.
Blockbuster Video.
Be kind, rewind.
Yeah, that's right. And so they were talking about what Blockbuster was and what it meant to get in your car and go to the Blockbuster store and like you're looking over the shelves.
It was a huge deal.
It was so dope.
It's a big decision. You go home, you got one fucking movie. You better pick the right movie. And I just remember like my son, who's older now, he's 22 now, but when he was a little kid, like we would spend 45 minutes in that Blockbuster. And like he's looking at all the new releases. I'm weird. I'm like looking at all the little indie films and then like what candy are we going to buy? And then when you get home, you're like, shit, I just spent the $4. I got this DVD in my hand. It was the last copy they had.
Oh, man.
The movie's starting, everybody let's go. And it's like Netflix has just crushed that for you. Just push a button.
But before we got to Netflix, we had Redbox. Like, oh shit.
Even Redbox was special a little bit.
Yeah. And everything that I've gotten from Redbooks, I bought because I never took it back. They just charged me.
But he's their favorite customer.
Yeah, they love me.
You see The Outpost yet?
The Outpost now.
Sean, you see The Outpost?
No.
Okay, it came out this weekend. I'm gonna pitch you on it. I'm
All
not involved in this movie at all. I have no involvement, but a buddy of mine was like the military advisor.
Okay.
And what it is, it's a book. Jake Tapper, who's a CNN journalist, wrote this book about one of the worst battles of the war in Afghanistan. And they're stuck in the bottom of this valley. This is a true story. It happened in 2009, I think. Stuck in the bottom of this valley. 59 American troops get attacked by 400 Taliban.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what happens is insane, but it's a wonderful movie. And what's special about the movie is the director was a West Point graduate. So he's a military guy.
So he has
A lot of the soldiers who survived it played themselves in the movie.
Wow.
My buddy is a friend of mine, a wonderful guy named Jericho, was the military advisor. So he was there throughout the entire movie. Everything, like, actor gets knocked down, has to jump back up, and he's got a gun in his hand. How do you hold that gun? You let the gun go and it hangs from your neck, and you push up with both hands, or you keep the gun in one hand. Like, I don't know the answers to those questions.
Right.
But my buddy, who was the advisor, and he's 20 years in as an Army Ranger, he's been in every situation. So he says, no, you hold it like this. You look at it like that. You talk like this.
So it's all, the movie's honest as it can get.
It's a kind of realism that I haven't seen in a war movie in a really long time. And because it's such a sensitive story, you know, American soldiers lost their lives in that battle. You don't want to romanticize it.
Right.
You don't want a fucking slow motion American flag waving in the wind with some cheeseball song under it. You want it to be real, to honor those people who you know, who sacrificed their lives and their families watching it back.
Right.
And let me just say, like, I haven't served in the military, so take this with a grain of salt, but it really felt like it did their experience justice. When that movie was over, I felt like I sort of understood just what it was like to be in that position. And that's I think that's the purpose of art.
Right.
That's the purpose of filmmaking, and this movie did an unbelievable job of that. So
those details like that make all the difference.
They add up. It's a
They
little
change-
detail.
They seem, each of them having a military advisor, or how you get up with the gun. All those little details add up to what becomes a fine picture, or in anything that we do.
That's what made me appreciate Interstellar so much.
Right.
Because they had actual astrophysicists working as producers to make sure the science was honest as far, and the stuff that they didn't know, the fiction, was good, educated guess. You know what I mean? It fit. So I can always appreciate something like that. So okay, we could segue that into where we are now, the current state of the world, the society here in the United States specifically.
Terrified.
It's terrifying. It's scary. We live in a very strange times. We have COVID lingering over our heads. We don't know to be scared of it or not. And then we have the current state of race relations and policy that need to be changed, and you know, a lot of civil unrest, and you know, we have a chief of staff that seems more divisive than anything instead of bringing the country together. Where are you at with all of this? How do you feel about everything?
I mean, to give context, I'm a educated. I mean, I'm not formally educated, but I got a lot of experience in this world. I'm almost 40 years old. I got 2 kids. I'm a white guy, and I'm successful. So, like, when it comes to privilege, or when it comes to, like, people who got to worry about shit, I'm on the bottom of that list. I got everything taken care of. Like, I got nothing to worry about. I'm living on a silver spoon. It certainly hasn't always been that way, and I'm very proud and happy to have gotten to this place in life. I don't mean to diminish it, but I mean I am the luckiest of the lucky. I deal with very few things that I think a lot of people are confronted with every day, and even with that, it is a source of anxiety for me that I'm struggling with, that I don't know that I've ever struggled like this in my life. When I think about sort of the external affairs.
Right.
Like, everything's great with my family. I'm not worried about paying my rent this month. I'm not worried about paying for food this month. I should be good. And instead, there's this constant kind of, feels like a lead blanket on my shoulders. And when I stop, and I'm like, why am I feeling that way today? It's like, well, what the fuck? Like, now our president's calling out the one black NASCAR driver. That's what he's choosing to focus on today? When we got 130,000 people dead because of this virus? That scares the shit out of me. We got a big election coming up, and I keep hearing these words, election fraud. Like, is it because there's actually election fraud, or is it because, like, you're trying to disrupt confidence in our system? You know, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump at all, and the best they could give us for an alternative is Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden's a good man. I think he'd be a compassionate leader, but I know that I'd be a little bit more excited if it wasn't a 78-year-old statesman who's been in this for 40 years. Like, I don't think he's going to be an agent of change.
Right.
And it's just like, it's all the things that you listed, but when you look to the future, it's hard to see what that light is that we're all steering towards. And that, I think, is the hardest part for me. It's one thing if you're going through some shit. We were talking about injuries before. My right leg is shattered, and rebuilt it out of metal, but I knew that shit would heal. I knew I'd be back up and running someday. And I do believe it, like emotionally, I believe that like this country is going to find its footing. It always has, and I believe in it, and I love America. But I don't know how. I don't know what the path is. I don't know who I'm looking to. I love our peers. You and I, we marched a lot with the Black Lives Matter movement. A lot of good young people out there just kicking ass, much younger than us. That gives me motivation. But when I literally look at the facts, who's in front of us, I look at who's running this country, I look at who's active in politics these days, I look at who are the people on the TV and the fucking Tucker Carlsons of the world just promoting hate, and Sean Hannity, you know, the disparaging things that are going out, the amount of people that are consuming that kind of content. It's a lot, and I've never felt such a burden from these kind of external, existential, what feel like existential crises that we're all dealing with right now.
Yeah, man, that's heavy. I felt everything you said, and I want to ask you this because I want you to explore this. I kind of have my own notion, but you know, you said that you are of privilege and you're successful, so you're even more privileged than what people can really grasp, right? Like, you're good, right? But you and I were shoulder to shoulder out protesting before the police had stood down, when it was volatile, when we felt that tension, you know, anything could have kicked off, and day after day, you know, and I felt a certain way, like looking around at everybody, like, damn, this is dope that people that are not black are out here, you know. Not only are you not black, but you're a rich white dude and successful, and you can insulate yourself and be good, but you were out here, you was out there in the streets. You even brought your famous like friends, and you know what I'm saying, out there, the girl, the model.
Yeah,
I'm like, she's out here in this shit. This is fucking dope. Like, why? What is it about you that you feel that kind of empathy or compassion or whatever you feel? Maybe I'm wrong. Like, what is it that you feel? Why do you feel there's nothing making you do this? You know what I'm saying? Feel these things.
Sure. You told me to watch this movie, Mike, called the 13th, and it's about the 13th Amendment, abolishing slavery. And there's an opening line in that movie. It's a documentary. I think it's on Netflix, right?
Yeah, it's on Netflix and YouTube as well.
Oh, it's on YouTube?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
On Netflix's channel, the whole thing.
It's a brilliant movie, but it's sort of the history of effectively racism, systemic racism in this country. And it's unapologetically told. It's got razor sharp teeth. It's not saying, let us present you with the facts and you can make a decision. It says, no, fuck you. This is what happened. There is no equivocation here.
Right.
But in the opening of that movie, there's a guy, he's a professor of history, and he says something, and he's like, as a white person in this country, you have to confront the fact that everything this country has been built by my ancestors. And then he says, for black people, for people of color, you have to confront the fact that everything this country was not built by your ancestors, were built by the white man.
No, built for, remember?
Is that what he said? Built for? I know, butchering it.
Yeah. Like, not even by, because to build it by.
That's right.
It was built by.
It was built by us as well, but it was not built for us.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think that people love to pretend that shit didn't happen, or pretend that's not the case, or pretend the fact that like 5 of the 7 founding fathers whose names are on our Constitution, they signed their names while they owned another human being. They owned another human being. People don't like to confront the fact that, like, yes, the abolishment of slavery in 1865 was a huge deal and progress for this country. The Emancipation Proclamation did make a difference. But it was 100 more years before the Civil Rights Act, where they had Jim Crow laws, which are just another version of slavery. And I think as a white person, we have an obligation not to just no longer perpetuate those wrongs, those misgivings of our past. We have an obligation to correct them. And, you know, for me, like, I was on welfare when I was 18 years old. Like, if I didn't get milk and diapers from the state, I'm not sure how I would have been able to keep my baby fed and in diapers when I was a teenage runaway. I know how hard life can be. But that shit's in my past now, and I am now in this position of privilege. And one thing that I try to confront at every opportunity is, how can I leverage that privilege to help others? I mean, before this Black Lives Matter movement began a few months ago, Mike, you and I were out tracking people down that were suffering economically because of the
lockdown.
Because of the lockdown, losing their jobs, people getting sick, and we, driving around the city day after day, just meeting up with people who are far less fortunate than us. And for me, that's the same. That's me using what I uniquely have because, sure, I worked hard, but a lot of it's luck. I uniquely have because I'm lucky. And when I say luck, I mean like I didn't do shit to be born in this country.
Correct.
I didn't do shit to get the privileges that white people get in this country. I didn't do shit for that. This is just shit that are people giving me that's my leg up on the rest of the world. So I have an obligation to pay that back. Right. And I think what was so beautiful about this movement that's happening now, which is long overdue, is its inclusivity. I can tell you the reason why I show up at those marches and I continue to show up at those marches is because I feel welcome there. So when you combine that inclusivity with the aspirations that I think a lot of people of privilege feel, which is I want to do something, but I'm not sure what it is. And then it says like, here's a movement. Here's a way you can stand up. Here's a way you can literally show the fuck up to show the world what you stand for. I'm there. And if you got to assume some risk, because you might get hit with a rubber bullet, which luckily I didn't this time. I've been hit with it.
You prepared though.
I got hit with a rubber bullet when I was in Ferguson years ago from the Michael Brown murder. I did get maced this time though. That's never fun. If that's the risk, that's an easy risk. That's a tiny risk. That's nothing. I'm not worried about getting shot. That's bullshit. Let's go.
Truth be told, like where I am, and this is the God's to heaven's truth. Like I'm ready to die for what I believe in, and I mean it. I don't say that lightly. I feel like where I'm at as an adult, this is probably one of the most meaningful times of my life because I've been aware of everything, the plight of black people in this country since I was a kid. Where I grew up, it was very cultural, and we learned real history, not just the stuff taught in school. So I've always known it. I've dealt with it. I know other people that dealt with, the atrocities at the other end of racism and unfair treatment. I've dealt with it. Like I could have been, y'all could not know me because I could be in prison for a racist law, a law targeted at blacks and Hispanics, and if anybody looked at it, it's like, are you kidding me? But these things exist, and a lot of people don't have the means to protect themselves, right? First of all, I think a lot of we're victimized often because no one has our backs, or so it is perceived that way. Because just a little bit of context on what I'm talking about. I had a self-defense situation, like as self-defense as it gets, like as clear-cut as it gets, right?
Not a lot of nuance.
No nuance. In my home, burglar, high on meth, the whole nine, right? A bad dude too, right? And here it is, I'm the one in trouble, right? Guarantee that wouldn't happen to you. You know what I mean?
Right.
When the cop was like, he said, any of my guys would have did exactly what you did. I'm like, okay, what's the problem? But got to match force with force. Head spinning, like, no, this is not happening. So, and then the extra things they try to throw on top of it just because. So, oh, who's this? I'm in a town. I was in a town that there's no black people there, really. You know what I mean? Right. So it was weird from when I first got there, when I moved out there, but these things happen, but I had, I got a decent engine up here, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna always try to think my way out of things and fight my way out. But I could have easily seen, I see how easy it would have been for me to just slip on in the system and be locked up for a long time for something
just another statistic.
Right. So those things exist, certain people experiencing brutality by the hands of the police because these police officers feel like, who are they going to tell? Right. And that's how it's been. So they can't do that. They wouldn't do that to you, Sean. Your parents would be like, excuse me? No. You know what I mean? Things will happen. Well, heads will fly. And that's how it should be, right? But no one should be victimizing nobody because they don't think that somebody has their back or they have the wherewithal to get out of these situations or know the law or whatever, right? So back to that movie, 13. So before that movie, I wanted to work on a documentary about history, because Sean and I have talked about this a lot, that, you know, in this country, they teach black history starts at slavery. Like, that's it. And I'm like, nah, first of all, let's talk about that on up. But we had a rich history before that too, you know what I'm saying, that people don't know about. It's interesting. I saw a Joe Rogan episode with a guy, I can't remember the guy's name, a black dude, but he was talking about blacks that was here before Columbus. And Rogan was like, okay, tell me how. And the guy couldn't. He knew it, well, he heard it, but he didn't know. I'm like, I wanted to like say it for him. You know, he didn't know, but I want to tell these stories in a real good way. In this document, it's not like stories passed down. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's documented even by Columbus. But there's a part of this whole thing, the narrative where they started at in 13, that there's a part that they left out or they didn't know. Because I went to work on a documentary, but when I seen theirs, I was like, they got it, they nailed it. You know what I'm saying? But I did a ton of research, a lot. So part of that, what was it, 1619?
Yeah.
Okay,
First slave ship.
That wasn't it. It was 1555, and it was a ship called Jesus or Jesus, however you want to pronounce it, and it was used to run slaves over or blacks over. And I didn't know this. 65 years of that brainwashing, of that you're not this, you're now this. That's when that happened. It didn't happen. We bring these guys all the way over, now start and don't teach your language, don't teach your customs, yada, yada, yada. They started kind of incubating that in the process for 65 years. It was evil, but brilliant, you know, to break souls and minds, and you know what I mean? So, and it made it a lot easier for them to deal with them.
Where did they take them?
All over South America and the Caribbean and things of that nature. Yeah, from Spain, it was Spanish from Spain, and Britain and United States. They were all, or America, what there was of America at the time. So, yeah, it was it's interesting. I'll show you guys some of the stuff after this, but you know, it's a lot, but I really appreciate, you know, your perspective. And there's a lot of people like you, just good people who may not be the victims of it, but I feel like we're all victims of it because it can affect. I mean, you had rioting close to your home at one point, right?
Yeah, there was looting a couple hundred
house.
feet from my house. Yeah, it was real scary. I had to send my family away and
right. So it's like everybody can experience the negative effects of it, you know, because the looting people are not looting for no reason. This is a side effect of the other problem, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would never justify. It's hard to justify criminality, but you can empathize with the motives. I mean, you can scream as loud as you want, and if nobody's going to listen, then where do you go from there?
Right.
Where do you go from there? Like, you know, how many churches burned? How many churches burned? Right. You know? Yeah. How many bombs did the KKK throw? Right. You know, so like if a target fucking burns out of anger, like, yeah, I wish it didn't happen. No, I don't endorse that, but I'm not going to sit here and say I don't understand it. I don't understand that expression of futility. Mm-hmm. And yeah, especially when it's close to my house. No, I hate it, but I would be lying if I said I didn't empathize with that kind of rage. Right. That kind of persecution, that's kind of institutional, just generational racism that exists. And when that manifests, as the police are the people who are here to keep us safe are actually murdering people in the street inconsequentially, no consequences for them, no trouble, something has to be done. And if no one's listening, like, fuck it. You do what you got to do to be heard. And yeah, it's tough. It's not easy for anyone, but dealing with matters of consequence on this level, shit's gonna go down. That's not easy.
Right. And what's disheartening to me, this fact is disheartening, but it's not. It doesn't surprise me how many there are people on the other side pushing back hard.
That's always been the case.
Hard. It's always the abolishment of slavery, the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. You know, anytime there's progress, there's a hard force opposing it.
Yeah, we got a day in this country called Martin Luther King Day. Nobody has got to go to school. And we celebrate him as a hero because that's what he is. But he wasn't then.
No, they hated him.
J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, said he was one of the most dangerous men in the country.
Right.
They vilified him. They fucking hated him.
Right.
They killed him. They murdered him. They killed his wife. They fucking murdered him.
And that's a fact. It's a fact that the United States government killed Martin Luther King, who they act like they revere.
The forces that push back against this are not new.
Right.
They've always been there. They've changed what they wear. They've changed how they've acted.
Right.
They've always been there, and that's a very, very uncomfortable thing to confront.
Do you think those forces will rise now?
Yeah, we're seeing them right now. We see them all the time.
Do you think they'll be formidable?
I think they are. I think they're doing a good job.
You know how I think they take the most action? And I've been, like Casey mentioned, I've been thinking, like, how does this improve? What's going to change here? And it does make me really sad when I see certain people even making statements that aren't directly racist or coming out. Just doing things that don't have a purpose and aren't constructive to the situation. They make me sad. And I think about what's really needed here. And the two things I look at are influence and money. If you want to solve something or if you want to bring attention to something, those are two ways to go about it. And that's why I really admire guys like yourselves who have a platform and have a voice that may be just louder than a normal person, and you choose to use it to express yourselves about what's right and what's not right, what you believe, because people who have money don't always step up because they might be willing to make a donation here or there, but sometimes their peers and people around them, they scare them into not doing things. Like I saw a movie I shared with Mike about the Deep South and how the time of where there wasn't slavery anymore, but Jim Crow was very much in effect, and there were laws. It was called The Help. I believe it was called The Help. Yeah. And it shows how sometimes there's people who know something's not right. They know it, they don't agree, and they want to do something, but they're scared. And they need other people to step forward so that they can step forward too. And that, I'm not going to say that those are bad people. They just don't have, money doesn't equal courage. Right. But people who have influence, who step forward, that to me is very courageous because you have a lot of eyeballs on you. That's where that influence is coming from. And if you choose to step forward, you can bring 10 other people who wanted to come forward with you. Well,
that's right. It's when I was out there, one of the days I ran into some really big social media kids, and they're young. And I was surprised to see them there. I was glad to see them there. I was surprised to see them there. And what I said to them after we left was like, every time you post your Instagram story of you being here, it feels like nothing. It feels like it's not a big deal for you. But for all these kids at home who don't know how to feel about these demonstrations, who don't know how to feel about these conversations that are taking place right now, when they see that you're participating in this and which side you're on, it's meaningful to them. It does go a long way. And when you talk about these forces that are sort of perpetuating these racism and perpetuating these awful things that this country is very guilty of, it still fucking exists. Like Donald Trump gave a speech this weekend, at Mount Rushmore. And no, he didn't say black people. He didn't call anyone out. He said things like these thugs and criminals in the street. Who the fuck do you think he's talking about? There's nothing subtle about that. We know who he's talking about. We know who he's trying to vilify. We know who he's trying to pit one side of this country against the other side. And we know how these sides are being defined. And I hate to bring him up so much. He is the commander-in-chief and the leader of this country. So I think his words have far more consequence, but I think that he is he's just indicative of a much, much larger problem that is so pervasive in this country. And they can keep changing their language, and they can keep seeking out euphemisms. But it's vivid what they're saying, and it's vivid who they're pointing their fingers at.
I think what... All right, so I have a couple thoughts. One is that there's video, there's audio of, like, say, Richard Nixon's right-hand guy explaining their whole method of, well, I mean, there's a video of this guy saying, well, I don't know who he's talking to, but he said, well, you just can't say nigger, nigger, nigger anymore. You get in trouble for that. But, you know, we can say it, call them this or say that, address it this way. Ultimately, who it's affecting, it's hurting the blacks, it's helping us, right? So part of me feel like if maybe I should share that. People should share these things because, yeah, Trump isn't saying, I feel like he says, like, heavy anti-Semitic sentiments.
Sure, absolutely.
And the racist stuff he says is hidden, right? But let's say he's not overtly saying these things. He's saying these things in code. He's saying very specific things that others before him said, exactly like he's saying it, right? And it's a what is it? What is it called? Dog whistle.
Yeah, dog whistle.
It's an actual tactic, right? However, bringing light to that, I feel like people still won't care. People that support him so heavy. Listen, if you support Trump policies, cool, whatever. However, I mean, just thinking about that, like, I was watching this thing about these people in Virginia, West Virginia, all white community, benefited heavy from Obamacare. They all got health care, yada, yada, yada. But they want to vote against, they want to repeal it because of Trump, right? And they had no good reason to. And then they're saying, like, well, I know Trump will give us something better, but he didn't present anything, right? So it's like people are blindly following, you know, because I can say, okay, maybe the policy worked for you, but the people voting for Trump, it doesn't work for them. It works for us.
No, none of it
His
makes,
policy
yeah,
is
makes a lot of sense.
for people in that higher tax bracket.
Yeah.
It's not for the average American, hardworking, blue-collar people. You know, it is not. This guy's a billionaire. Don't give a fuck. It's benefiting his buddies, really, you know, and the people the dollars that help him get in. Why are people so attached? Why are they so attached?
It's difficult to reconcile. I don't know. And,
it blows my mind.
And the more I learn, the harder it is, actually.
Yeah.
Like the more I investigate, like, even his business history, like, I wanted to believe
he was a good business. That's what they say. He's a good business, but he's not.
I wanted to believe that narrative, but, like, there is nothing to substantiate that unless you consider navigating bankruptcies and getting loans to be.
Well, that's what he said. He
tenets
says,
of being a good businessman, but I don't.
When he got called out for dodging this and not with tax and not paying tax for this, well, I'm smart.
Well, that's
like, what he said.
Like, knowing
He's
how to
clever.
navigate taxes is
but
one
that's
thing.
not okay because taxes is what keeps this country running.
Right. No, I'm not even saying I agree with that. But
Yeah.
whatever's the things you're allowed to do, I would, obviously encourage everyone to do it because we pay a lot of taxes.
Right.
So the things that are legal and okay to do, I'm fine with those. But, like, his history is just like one failure after another, followed by obtaining of more funds from different banks to the point where no one would lend to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've been reading more and more about it. Just like failure after failure after failure, where he's able to navigate the bankruptcy, get new money in from other people, and do a new project, and it just never seems to really pan out.
Right. And even his predecessor, his father, wealth came from, like, the sex industry.
I didn't know that.
Brothels.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Yeah. And then,
who are you talking about?
Trump's dad.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, then he parlayed it into real estate. And all his deals were just brutal. It was like just gangster shit. You know what I'm saying? Which I'm not 100% mad at, but it's not like, this is not what our country needs.
No, but again, like, I'll never defend anything that our president has done or said, but I still think that he is just a symptom. I think that he is a symptom of a much, much larger problem, and I think that not all of his supporters, I don't subscribe to this idea that everyone who supports him is a deplorable or an awful person. No. I just think there's such a gross disenfranchisement. And when I say symptom, like the symptom of that gross disenfranchisement, like what you get from that is a president like him. But I think it's far more pervasive than one man. I think that one man is in an extraordinary position of power right now to promote and continue these things. But I think that the problem goes far, far deeper than that. And what that means, and this is, we started this conversation talking about what keeps me up at night. What it means is that, like, simply removing someone you don't like from office, which, you know, could happen this November, does not solve this problem. Mm-hmm. It doesn't solve the problem that this country is facing right now, the divisiveness that we see every day, whether it's cops shooting a black kid, or it's people marching in the street, or it's these, you know, white guys with huge guns outside of a courthouse screaming at people because they don't want to put on a fucking mask. Like, whatever it might be, that kind of divisiveness is not going to go away simply because he's no longer our president. And I think that there is especially on the, you know, politically, there's this laser focus on him exclusively. And I find that to be a little bit misguided, because I do think that he is he's a big arbiter of this situation and what we're seeing, what we're hearing right now. But I don't think he's it. I don't think simply removing Donald Trump from the White House is going to solve all this country's problems. It's not a bad start, but I think that they go far, far deeper than that. And this country has to really reconcile what has been several hundred years of missteps. Done a lot of great things. Put a man on the moon. It's wonderful. It's a great fucking country. It's the greatest country in the world. But we got our problems. And as long as we keep pushing them under the rug or not confronting them head on, I think that those problems just keep and will continue to grow.
I agree with you. I want to deal with it. You know, I'm here. It's a lot of uncomfortable conversations to be had. I want to have them. Yeah. You know, I'm a rational person. You know, I want to sit with people who feel differently. Lay out your views. Let me lay out mine. Where can we come? Where can we meet at? I can't compromise on what's right, though, you know? And far too often people want that. They say, well, we both have our opinions on. Look, this is not an opinion.
There's a right and there's a wrong.
There's a right and a wrong. And there's facts that exist that you may not be aware of because it doesn't affect you negatively, you know? And people gotta understand, you might not wanna. Some white people don't want to accept it because it's ugly. The history is ugly, and nobody wants that on them.
That's right.
But what they gotta understand is this: I'm not judging nobody.
Sure.
I judge people on an individual basis. If you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit. That's something I'm gathering now. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not because great grandparents. That's not. I don't hold on to that. I'm not. You know. So. That's not it, and that's not how we're going to be treating people or how I would treat anybody. We need to have open, honest discussion with respect to just work these things out. I think we were talking about this in the gym earlier, but we need a movement of love, right? And that's not to be weak or soft. I don't believe in being weak or soft at all. We got to be strong. We got to be deeply rooted in what's right. We got to educate ourselves on everything and have our shits together. But we got to be spreading love. In this country, you know, there's a lot of things that go on in this country that make black people feel unwanted. You know, a lot of rhetoric. You know. But I'm not fucking going nowhere. This is my country, as well. You know, like my people have blood, sweat, and tears. We fought in the Civil War too. You know what I mean? We won many Olympic medals for this country, which matters. You know what I'm saying? We've done a lot. We have a lot of great achievements. You know, especially starting at such a deficit, and we've helped build the foundation of this nation for free. For free. For free. Did I mention it? So we deserve to be here, and we deserve fair and equal treatment. So I'll fight for that. You know, it just frustrates me how people fight against it.
Right.
I would never in a million years do that. Never. If what's right is right, and if anybody is getting mistreated, I'm with them. In a hurry. I don't care what they look like, what their background is. In a hurry, I'm there.
Well, I think it's like people fighting against it, or what I find particularly frustrating is people who sort of deny or don't acknowledge that there is these injustices that exist in America and how deeply rooted they are. They'd say they don't exist, and I think that the reason why is very obvious. Is because, like you said, you don't want to have to confront these misgivings of the past. You don't. Right. That's a shitty thing to have to confront. Because the reality is, like, I was born in 1981. I didn't own any slaves. I don't know shit about that. Easy to say. Right. But the reality is, as a white man in this country, you do benefit from these past injustices. So to right that, you have to use that benefit. You have to use that to help elevate people who don't have those benefits. And I think that that's a big pill to swallow. I think that that's something that maybe people don't. It's much easier to say, no, that shit doesn't exist at all. Because the truth is, life's hard for everyone. Right. White, black, rich, poor, life's hard. Life's fucking hard. You hear about movie stars and rock stars and millionaires and billionaires and killing themselves and all kinds of shit. Life's hard for everyone. Don't get me wrong. Life is hard for everyone. So you tell me I'm privileged because of the color of my skin. It's like, well, no, my life's still hard. And people don't want, nobody takes that out of fucking context, all right? I'm not saying, that's not my point. But people don't want to confront that because they're still dealing with hardships every day. Right. But I think if you've benefited from misgivings of the past, which I as a white man have, Sean, you have, we all have, that gives us an obligation. Or if you want to be even more positive term, it gives us an opportunity. An opportunity to correct the wrongs of the past. If we're given this advantage, whatever it may be, then let's use that advantage, and let's use that advantage to fix those wrongs. And to me, that's the most honest, that's the most fair, and that's the most sort of altruistic way you can look back at the shitty history, and look to the future and say, okay, we're going to make this better. We can correct this. And I think you're talking about a movement of love and the positivity that you and I both felt when we were marching. I think that for me, it really felt like we're headed in the right direction. Like I know after the George Floyd murder in particular and people's reactions to it, I don't know that it fucked me up personally. It fucked me up personally. I wanted to say something. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to act on it. I didn't know how to act. And I'm just sitting at home and it's festering. And then we showed up. We're out there. And we're surrounded by hundreds of other people who are out there. And you're like, you know what? There's unity here. We're in this together. We can push this thing forward. We can address this. People care. And that's an incredible thing to feel.
Let's get into some of the things, because this is a uphill battle, and it is a battle. It's a war, right? It's a war for just what's right. That's it. Now, there are little battles all over the place that there's narratives, curveballs being thrown to get people from talking about the underlying factors and what we need to be talking about. And one of them are Black Lives Matter, the organization. People are, and I even felt myself, because I didn't know anything about the organization until we researched it, and everybody in here were researching it, just getting as much information as we could. But before that, I was like, I don't know nothing. Fuck them. I don't care about them. I'm talking about Black Lives Actually Matter. Right. But I'm like, why am I saying fuck them? Like, let me see who they are and what they're about. Let me see if that's valid, right? Everything I looked up checks out. Nothing looked sketchy. Very transparent, doing everything the way they're supposed to be doing it. What's the problem? So I see nothing wrong with what they're doing, right? We talked earlier that, how there's no centralized leadership, I guess. So there might be small factions that might try to do grimy shit like steal money or whatever. Or
yeah, I mean, like I'm not an expert on this, but I did just read something like one. I think the power of the Black Lives Matter movement is that it's decentralized. Right. The march that we participated in, a small group of young people organized that, and it's in one location in LA. Like at the same time we're doing that march, there's another one across the city. There's a organized by different people. Right. And we're all marching for the same thing, but we're not we're not organized, and I think that's powerful.
Right.
I think that that's powerful. I think if you look back and you look at some of the movements this country has seen before, you look at what the Black Panthers were doing, you look at what Malcolm X was doing. There's a target, because the people who didn't want that to happen knew if they were able to sort of end the leadership or confine the leadership, that they could mute that movement.
Right.
But because the Black Lives Matter movement is so decentralized, it makes it much harder to keep quiet. And I think that's a really wonderful thing.
Right.
But there have been some bad actors. There have been some people taking advantage, whether it's like, selling a T-shirt saying the proceeds are going here and they don't.
Right.
Because they're bullshit. But
that will always exist in any
that's what I was going to say.
organization.
That no matter what you're doing, that's always
Yeah.
going to exist. And I think one of the frustrating things is when that gets more attention than
Right.
the positive. Yes, you
Right.
can't do anything in this world
100%.
without there being some opportunist
Right.
who's taking
Right.
advantage. And
So
it's a blip.
And whoever has done that is not doing any harm to anybody. If they're making money on a T-shirt or whatever, who cares? They must need it. But also part of the narrative of the nefariousness of BLM and who's backing them is George Soros is backing them. So I'm like, fuck Soros. I don't know nothing about this guy. Why am I saying fuck Soros? Let me look and see who he is. Because typically, listen, y'all, I research everything. We all research things because it's really silly to make bold statements and jump out the window on something you don't know what you're talking about. So, and before I was going to do that, I was like, let me see who this guy is, because I don't know who the fuck this guy is. He's some boogeyman. And everything that I've read, and I'm looking for dirt, checks out. Of course, people on the conservative side don't like him because he's a liberal guy. So the scandalous things that were said about him were said specifically by Trump and Fox News, like literally. So you take that with a grain of salt. Fox is just a corporation. It's not real news. Just like CNN, not real news. These are just businesses with agendas, okay? And of course Trump has an agenda. And come on, people can't believe, they can believe what they want, but don't indict anyone with something without evidence, okay? There's no evidence of any wrongdoing. If he's done something, I don't know. I can't find it. But it looks like he's been very consistent throughout his life. He's a really rich guy. He's smart, and smart people know how to get to the money, and he's gotten to the money with the bees, where I want to get to. And but everything that he supported or got behind are movements that coincide with his beliefs. Him being a liberal guy, a heavy liberal guy. So, and he's not funding them. I believe he made a donation to them in 2016 after Trayvon Martin. But it's not like that's his satellite company that he's funding.
Have you looked into him much?
I mean, I know a bit about his past. I certainly do, and I don't. I mean, maybe it's because I'm naive, but I don't know why he uniquely became such a target of sort of what
I think I know
appears
why.
to be like rife anti-Semitism. But no, I don't. I'm not an expert.
Well,
at all.
He's, from what I gather, he's a Jewish billionaire guy. So you have your,
Didn't he survive the Holocaust?
Yes,
Right,
yes.
right.
He made it out. So I even seen people
They
try
pretended he was
a Christian.
a Christian boy,
Yeah.
a nephew of someone.
Right.
I think it was the
Yeah.
story.
And I even seen them try to twist that as if he worked with the Nazis.
Right.
And I'm like, when you read the story, the actual story, he was a kid, for one. They're not hiring kids.
He's a little kid who
He's a
just
kid
didn't want to die.
There's
who's
this.
being guided out by an older family member.
There's this. If we're talking about conspiracy theories here, there's this conspiracy theorist who's on YouTube and on Twitter, and he was associated with Alex Jones, and bad actor. And I released a video in 2016 that was just saying I'm voting for Hillary Clinton, and it was not about elevating her, but it was really about speaking my truth about how I felt about Donald Trump.
Right.
I used heavy language. I called him a racist in the video. I called him a misogynist in the video. And a lot of people came after me after that. And one of these people was this guy, this conspiracy theorist. And he released this video to his sizable audience. And in his video, he conclusively, in his bullshit conspiracy nonsense, he conclusively showed how I was paid for that endorsement, which is such a nonsensical thing.
What was his evidence?
Because I had taken a picture with Hillary Clinton when I was 24. We stood next to each other. I was like really excited. I was a kid. It was the first job I ever had, and I got to meet her.
That's great.
I might have been 22. My tie wasn't even tied correctly. And it was really upsetting for me because he's an intelligent, although wildly misguided, he's an intelligent individual, this conspiracy theorist. And he knows in his heart that what he's saying, he's making up. This is a lie. He's pulling this out of thin air. But he, more importantly, understands how folks are going to react to it, which is that all he has to do is make this sort of sound like it makes sense. And in that, that's enough for people to sort of promote what is nothing more than a conspiracy theory. And I've never been on the receiving end of a conspiracy theory where I know the absolute truth.
Right.
That I didn't fucking take money from anyone to say that Donald Trump is a misogynist. I mean, the guy is... I saw the video of him walking off of an Access Hollywood bus. Like, you don't speak like that,
right?
Unless you are a misogynist.
Right.
Like, you don't say that our president was not born in America. You don't be a birther. You don't lead the birther movement unless you do harbor some element of racism in your being. Like, these are unequivocal facts here. That was my evidence to say what I say about the president, not some financial upside that a presidential candidate might have given me, let alone the fact that like I'm not particularly motivated by money. I've got my money. I made my bag. I'm fucking good. So I'm on the receiving end of what was an absolute conspiracy theory, and in there it was a moment of clarity for me of how these conspiracy theories, whether it's the fact that there's a child sex ring being run out of the basement of a pizza shop in D.C. or anything else, how these things can begin and how they can spiral out of control. So no, I don't know shit about George Soros, but what I do know is how nonsense conspiracy theories can begin as something small. They can be a tiny seed and they can grow into these big hulking oak trees that can be wildly destructive. And I think that when you combine that with these new forms of communication, the Twitters of the world where anybody can say anything, and Facebooks and YouTubes where it's much easier to get a message out there, even a nefarious one, even a one that has very little truth to it, it does lead to a combustible situation. And then when you have leadership that says that the journalism and the press is the enemy of the people, I think it leaves a nation sort of sitting there with their hands in the air saying, well, who am I supposed to trust?
And what's so dangerous, what people are not paying attention to is history. And I'm big on history, especially military history. And I'm like a lot of people want to leave right now. But if you look at World War II and Hitler's rhetoric, that's exactly what he did. He made the media look like nothing, you know?
Right.
That's the first thing he did. So, and Trump has been doing this since day one. Fake news, fake news. I don't like, that's a nasty question. It's not. It's just I want a truthful answer. But
the scary thing is the effectiveness of it. Like, all you have to do is plant a seed of doubt that the things you're hearing are not true. And look, I'm a skeptical person. We should all be skeptical about what we see and hear and try to find our own truths. But that hasn't changed. But what has changed in the last 3.5 years is it's become much harder to tell truth from fiction. I struggle with it.
Partly, I leaned on, I had a little faith in people thinking for themselves. I don't care what the president say. I'm going to do what I feel is right.
Sure, but where do you get the facts to make those decisions? Where do you get them?
Right. So, but I feel like people are just going to listen. They're not going to do any research on their own.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that just listen, that parrot back what they think. They pick someone that they like, and whatever that person says is truth. But my concern is that it becomes much harder for independent thinkers to find the data points to make those decisions on. I mean, you pick something. What's the news of the day today? Coronavirus. Like, the coronavirus has been so wildly politicized, which is so unfortunate.
It's so strange.
Because it is science and it's medical and it affects everybody, and it doesn't matter who you are. Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, like, he is the president, and he refused to acknowledge the seriousness of it. He's said countless times, it's just a flu, it's just a flu. You don't need to wear masks. We're not shutting down the government. We're not shutting down our economy. He announced yesterday he has it. He's sick. He has the coronavirus right now.
Holla. I'm happy about that. I'm petty. I'm happy about that.
Sure. It is.
That dude is a
He's a monster.
He's
I'm not a fan
dude.
of his. But the point is that, you know, if you're someone in the country who's trying to figure out, if you're someone who's not as smart as you are, Mike, and you're trying to figure out, well, is this thing, should I be scared of this or should I not? And you look up and you see the leader of your country saying, don't worry about it. It's nothing. It's just like getting a cold. Well, then you feel one way. And then if you look at the scientists and they're saying you should be fucking terrified of this because it has the potential to, you know, really, really hurt people and hurt a lot of people. And it's like, well, that conflicts with what that guy says. And it just leaves us at a place of confusion. And I think that the more people say the words like fake news or enemy of the people, it furthers that confusion. And that to me is really disheartening. When you don't, yes, even good people with good morals and good intuition can make the right decision about what's right and what's wrong. But if they don't know where to get the information to make those decisions, it means the problem has gotten much bigger than just one individual's judgment.
Right. I want to bring somebody to like a channel. All right, so a lot of people may not trust the news. I don't. I watch the news and I'll glance through every network, just seeing what's going on, and just for my own social experiment, just seeing like, okay, what they're gonna say this, they're gonna say that. But where I've been getting my news from for the past 3 years is a friend of yours, Philip DeFranco. I don't know Philip DeFranco. He didn't ask me to do this, neither did Casey. He breaks down just world events, state, local, countrywide, nationally, and international, and in a very fair and honest way. He's just presenting fact. He's not giving his spin. He asks the people, what do you guys think? But he just presents the information, and I appreciate that. I tend to go there. Look, every day I'm like, I got to watch Philip DeFranco. You know what I mean?
That's good to hear.
I really enjoy, it's like us. We trust us. It's someone you can see he's a good person. The information is no spin on anything. You can go and fact check anything. You've seen so many organizations and try to figure out how to do news on YouTube, and there's been a lot of struggle. Like very few success stories in that space. And Phil is one of those unique success stories because I don't think he comes from a traditional world of what we now know as traditional or mainstream journalism. Right.
And I think that he's used that to his benefit. He speaks like a human being. He speaks like a friend would speak to you. And he does have a way of explaining things that make sense. Now, he's one of my favorite YouTubers too. I really love the guy. He's just a wonderful person, great dad, great husband. But no, I appreciate that there are individuals out there like him who's just trying to find the truth, who's just trying to find an honest way to cut through the noise and cut through the fat, to share with the world what they see as the most sort of relevant stories told in the most impartial way.
Right.
I think the world would be well served if there were a lot more people like him and a lot fewer people with huge platforms just, you know, out there sharing demagoguery that is wildly destructive to people in this country. Correct.
Yeah. So I usually support that channel. I've talked about it before, but I highly recommend you guys. I'll link it down below to check that out if you feel a certain way about these news organizations, which I do. I don't trust them, but I find what I feel like I can trust, and I trust that source, Philip DeFranco, and it's fun to watch. It's not boring, and it's dope. But shout out to Philip DeFranco. But yeah, so back to what I was saying earlier. It's so many little battles that kind of throw you off and throw the conversation off, and I never want to get sidetracked, and I don't want to ever spend too much time with people on, okay, Black Lives Matter is not a conspiracy. They don't do this. They don't do that. You know what I mean? Sure. So, and it's just so unfortunate. Like, they would take that. There's no one leader like a Martin Luther King or a Malcolm X or Huey P. Newton or whomever to demonize. So now they're demonizing this movement, right? And that's very unfortunate. But people got to be smarter than that and think for yourself. Research things on your own. And when I'm looking up websites and if I'm reading something and it seems interesting, I'll look up that site to see if that site have some kind of political leaning.
Understand the source. Yeah.
Right. My sources are not any political left or right. Like, I don't want any of that. I want something down the middle. I found a lot of info on Soros, like on just financial sites, because he's in that world, you know. So that's why I want to be on. I want to look at everything objectively and not biased, and not leaning towards what I feel. Like, I don't care about what I feel. I just care about facts, you know. And I don't want to be passionate about something that I'm completely wrong about, you know. So research,
Yeah,
Google.
Educating yourself is something that I think is, there's nothing sexy about that, but I think
it's super sexy.
You do? Well, good.
You know what I
good.
mean?
Keep saying it louder than Mike,
Yeah.
but I think it's such an, especially now, with so many sources, and it's a hot take is such a simple thing to do. Taking the time to really educate yourself and try to understand things, I think is super important. Not saying something, people are so scared to say I don't understand, and I think that that's okay. I think it shows strength to be able to say you don't understand something, to be able to say you're not informed about something. I think that it's far more dangerous to bullshit than it is to just say you don't understand something.
Right. Okay, so I want to get off of that real quick, but I want to ask you, what do you, in your mind of mind, your heart of hearts, what's coming? What's next? Is it going to be resolution or more conflict before the resolution?
I think more conflict. I don't mean to be doom and gloom, and I don't mean to be a pessimist, but I just look at all the indicators, and I'm very concerned about what's going to happen around this election. I think Trump said something extraordinary in 2016, which was that when he was asked, will you accept the results of the election? This is in 2016. He says, I will if I win. And I think then it was dismissed as tongue-in-cheek. He does joke a lot, and it was sort of dismissed as a joke. But I think there's a lot of truth to look at with that right now. I mean, we saw what happened we've seen what's happening all over the country. I think Kentucky was the most recent to have a special election, and they went from having something like 3,000 places to vote to something like a few hundred. They had one polling place in particular that was supposed to service 600,000 residents in one polling place. And make no mistake, that's voter suppression. So between, a lot of top leadership raising a lot of questions about legitimacy of the vote, which in my best understanding is there's no reason for. Like, their voter fraud is not, we had a lot of problems, but voter fraud is not one of them. But by raising that question, combined with the fact that there's such sort of arrogance on behalf of our president about his accepting or not accepting of the results, I think that it's going to be an extremely tumultuous, sort of unfounded time in and around the election, regardless of who wins and who loses. And I'm very nervous and very scared about that. I'm scared for the well-being of the country.
Right. I
hope that if Trump wins, then Joe Biden will congratulate him, and Trump will be president for the next 4 years. I hope that if Joe Biden wins, that Trump is respectful and hands off the keys to the White House in the way that every president before him has. And I hope I'm dead wrong about this. But I look at the indicators, and I'm very nervous about what could take place in and around the election if the results are not accepted.
Right. What do you think, Sean?
I think the question that I have is about the vote. I'm wondering if you guys think in our lifetime, like you said, voter fraud in terms of like people's votes not being counted correctly. I don't believe that's an issue, but there's a big issue, which is the entire electoral college system.
Oh yeah,
it's just a weird system, and I really want in our lifetime for that system to be reconfigured.
Correct.
Completely.
I agree with you, because
it doesn't make sense. We talked about how Trump and then also Bush are the two presidents who didn't win the popular vote, but won
the electoral college
due to knowing how to work the electoral college or their strategy or what have you. And that just shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that way. And it's such a thing for us to just address and change.
Right. Because what it means at the end of the day is that the majority of the country did not support that candidate, yet that candidate won for the whole country.
Yeah, because this shit is confusing, but each state has X amount of electoral colleges and electoral votes. So you can be in a state in which more people voted against Trump But if that state has more electoral colleges than a state, wait. It's fucking confusing.
It'll all come down to the districting and the way the lines are drawn and where you live.
And that's a problem too, because those are.
It's just too much. There's just too much interpretation.
They're redrawn.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger has really been wildly vocal about, which is he presents it as an apolitical issue, and he's absolutely right. But gerrymandering and redistricting,
it is so weird.
They're cherry picking.
It's so bad
where the votes are to do. That to me, that's
they have guys that they hire just to do that.
Yeah, and that, make no mistake, that's an erosion of democracy, and that's a very disheartening thing to see, because what that does ultimately is it could discourage people, disenfranchise people from being a part of the democratic process, which is the very foundation of this country. So I'm very hopeful, but I'm also very realistic about the concerns that we're going to have to confront in and around this election, and I hope it goes smoothly. And I hope whoever wins is gracious and does as their predecessors have done. And I just hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping wrong.
I pray you're wrong.
I hope so too.
You know, but if not, fuck it. We got work to do. It is what it is.
Regardless, Mike, we got work to do.
We got work to do regardless. But yeah, so we got to weather that storm. I mean, to what you said earlier, this country, we've been through a lot of shit. I think we're gonna be okay. Might take a minute.
Well, we're going to be okay.
We're going to be okay.
It's going to take a minute. And I look back, like, think of the year 1968 and what went down that year and the chaos that was. And if you examine that 1 year and try to imagine living that year, that's it. This is it. This is the end. And we made it through. We pulled through. And I think that, you know, we're in a dark time right now, and some of those wounds are self-inflicted. Some are not. No one could have predicted the coronavirus. The way we dealt with it was self-inflicted. It could have been smaller. It could have been dealt with better. But nobody could have seen that coming. And, you know, so you have to take it with what it is. You have to deal with it the best you can. You got to move forward. You got to find hope, and you got to find ways through this and ways out of this to improve this country and make it a better place for everybody else. Mike, I didn't know this podcast would be so fucking political, man. I thought we were going to talk about lifting weights and YouTube and shit.
But nah, man, the people have been liking. We had Eric Weinstein in here, and they really loved that conversation. So I think they, and you know, it is what it is. This is where we're at, bro.
This is where we're at. You can't be afraid of having a serious talk.
It's a real thing, and I think it's important. Like, I think racism is so fucking stupid, right? But for them to see a black man, a white man, Middle Eastern man, you know, it's like we're friends. We respect each other. I have white friends that are conservative guy. Like, the word conservative is weird to me. It's like, you're not really a conservative person. Like, it's like, what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's just a political whatever. It's silly, but in my opinion. But I have friends that have different opinions, right? And that's what I don't care. It's fine. I'm totally fine with that. I will never be like, you're fucking stupid. You just believe everything in the media. I don't do that with anybody, because every political party, every ideology, whatever, has valid points and things that make sense to that person. Yeah. Who am I to tell you that that's stupid? You should not follow that. I would never say that, you know? So I just wish, I want people to have.
I mean, I'd say that to a guy wearing a white hood, and that'd probably punch him.
I want him to wear that so he can get punched up and fucked up. You know what I'm saying? Dumb people, I want them to do dumb shit so they can experience what happens. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it is what it is. Go ahead and be that dumb. But I would love for people to see these conversations, to have their own conversations with people that don't look like them.
Yeah, that's right.
And with respect, you know. This is my bro. These are my bros. Like, I love y'all, I respect y'all. And I want to have people in here that have opposing views, right? I want to let's hash it out. I want to talk about these things. I want to, you know, I got a lot of cop friends, a lot of guys in law enforcement, and they have been told they can't speak on these things publicly right now. We've been having our private conversations, and it's very interesting and it's dope. And these are conversations that people need to hear, because here's the thing: this is bigger than the police and black people, bigger than that. However, that's a heavy thing, And there's a history with that, you know. Police started as a slave patrol. It wasn't just cops, you know. And there was a culture there, and some of that culture still exists, but there's good dudes now, you know what I'm saying? So we need to have these dialogues, you know what I'm saying? But unfortunately, they're not allowed to do much public speaking right now, you know, which I think is very strange, but it is what it is. But I support good law enforcement officers, good one, and I emphasize good. Because people say, oh, it's only 90%, 97% is good. No, it's a lot of bad ones. It's a lot. It's heavy. I've experienced it. Even when shit didn't go bad, like when I was a trainer, I trained a lot of cops. And I've heard some foul shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm afraid that guy's a cop. You know what I mean? So, and that's for black or white. I'm afraid for anybody who he unleashes his wrath on, you know? He's a little insecure dude, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's a lot. Like, I listened to a podcast with Jocko Willink. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Jocko's a G. He's a friend.
I love that guy, man. I love that guy. Him and Joe Rogan. But Jocko, he said so much dope shit about training for law enforcement and how these guys should be trying to de-escalate. He said in his SEAL training, he teaches people to de-escalate, not come in, what the fuck? That's not it. Like, all right, how's it going? You know, you think better, you know, you kind of disarm the guy with a calm demeanor. I mean, there's so much to it, so much nuance, but he's heavy on the training. And he brought up how, you know, our law enforcement don't get much training at all, and they're thrown out there to the wolves. So, and they treating everybody like wolves, like, you know, so especially here in LA, Sheriff's Department, you spend 2 years in the jail and then to the street. So you treating everybody like prisoners. Right. You know what I mean? It's strange. So there's a lot of things and a lot of powerful and important voices that need to be heard right now, you know, and amplified. And I'm gonna do my best to amplify when I can. And but people need to hear these conversations, and they need to have them themselves, and they need to understand, like, racism typically, because there's some strange outliers, but racism does not stand up in person.
Yeah, it's much harder. It's easy to say something in a vacuum. It's much harder when you're being confronted.
Correct. And when you deal with somebody that you think you might hate them because of their race, first of all, that's so dumb. Yeah. When you really think about it. But, you know, there's a lot of people who don't. I have so many friends that I've met in my days of training, moving to California and training people, that don't know any black people. And that didn't bother me. I'm like, it makes sense. You live in Huntington Beach. There's no black people there. I get it. You know what I'm saying? And we became good friends. You'd be surprised, you know, how similar you are to someone who don't look like you when y'all get to talk,
spend some time together.
Hang out.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, with everything going on in the world, one thing that I think that people will be able to take away from Casey, they've heard our take on it quite a bit, is despite everything going on, we have a lot of control over our individual lives. And the question I wanted to ask you, Casey, in closing was, are you happy on a daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and what do you, and so if the answer is yes, since it's yes, what do you think are some of the things that contribute to that? I always like to ask that from people, like, what are their markers of happiness for themselves?
Sure. So, I mean, I'm in a sort of perpetual state of auditing my life. And what I mean by that is it's like getting as much bad away from me as possible and weighing out the good with the bad. And we were joking before we started this podcast about the box of cookies sitting on the corner on the shelf over there. And it's like, okay, cookies are fucking delicious.
So good.
Okay, but like a week ago, I'm like, you know what? I'm eating too much shit and it makes me feel bad. So I audit that out. Okay, but cookies have a very little impact on your overall happiness. But friends, the people you have in your life, the people you let into your life, that has a tremendous impact on your happiness. How about auditing the way you speak to people that you love? You know, I'm married for 7 years and 2 little babies at home. And if I lose my temper with my 5-year-old because she does something inconsiderate or rude or she's disrespectful to her mother, and I shout at her, and then I feel bad that night. So I have to stop and I audit. And I say, like, why did I raise my voice to her? And was that necessary? Is there a more effective way to do it? And next time I pull her aside and I speak to her eye to eye, and I feel better about that. And I'm very lucky to be at a place where I'm, I'm older now, I'm 39, so I'm able to take the time to be this degree of self-aware. And it's been very costly, and I don't mean financially, but I feel as if I have fewer friends now than I've ever had in my entire life. But every friend that I have right now is a fucking friend. Yeah. It's not someone I say hi to. It's not someone I want to hang out with so I can get into a party. It's not someone I hang out with because I think that they're cool and they think I'm a piece of shit. I have very few friends. I have quality friends, people in my life that I genuinely care about. Toxic individual is someone who makes people around them, brings them down. I work so hard to remove those people from my life, even at great expense. Even if it means losing opportunities or anything else, even if it means losing friends that I do like because I cut someone out in the middle who isn't working.
Right.
So I think it's like, if the word auditing is too scary, maybe it's self-reflection, but just always stopping and looking in the mirror, taking an absolute account for your own happiness, your own responsibility, your own actions. And that to me has been a path to a kind of happiness that that has worked, not faulting others for my problems, owning them, making them better, correcting them, trying to right the wrongs of my past. And then just a shitload of luck. Right. I am healthy. I got 2 legs that work. Like, I am a lucky fucking
how
man.
Crazy, how much of a good fortune that is.
I don't have any terminal illnesses, knock on wood. I am one of the luckiest people alive. And every day, I stop and I say, how fucking lucky am I today? And that makes you really happy. That makes you really happy to just appreciate what you've got, to be grateful for everything in front of you. Everything, because so few people on this planet get that.
Absolutely. Look, that's real. Like, you said some heavy things, just the self-auditing, the self-reflecting. That's something that I got to at a certain point in my life. That seed was planted with my dad like years ago, but at some point it just really hit me to really check myself, and and I asked people around me that, yo, let me know if I'm fucking up, please. So that's a real thing. And, I feel like people at the right time, hopefully, will do that for themselves. The world will be a better place.
Yeah, it takes a degree of maturity. You got to kind of grow up. If you told 20-year-old me to do that, I'd say, what the fuck you talking about?
I was perfect, right? I did everything right. Like,
exactly.
No, everybody else got the problem.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But I really appreciate you, man, coming down, bro. Like, you're a breath of fresh air, man. You're like, I found Sean. We found each other, I don't know, 6, 7, however many years ago. And then our relationship came to where it's at, just organically and in a real way. And like, I'm the same. Like, I have very few friends, but it's heavy. Right. It's heavy and it's dope. And we just have a ball with each other. So, this was great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming down, man. And y'all make sure, y'all probably already follow this guy, but make sure you follow Casey if you don't. That. And man, we'll talk more soon. Thank you, bro.
Thanks, Casey.
Wear a mask.
We out of here. All right. Wear a mask, motherfuckers.